Now imagine an army. I don't remember how big, or if it says how big the army is, but imagine that.
Right.
In full
Yeah.
metal armor, probably bronze, full armor, jumping up and down because some like 14, 15, 16-year-old kid throws a pebble from a Brookline brook into the forehead of a giant.
Yeah.
Right? And then he chops his head off.
Yeah. Or to think of...
And that's just the start. That's the origin story.
I know, killer origin story. But even to think of, so like the cease of quaking, I think of the Philistines probably like, yeah, Goliath, like, yeah, squash him, step on him.
Yeah.
And like all of the raging cheering and the banging the swords against the shields. And then first watching him go down and then the cutting off the head.
Well, he's going to get back up, right?
Yeah.
He's got to get back up.
So first it went silent when he fell down. And then it got really loud again because they were running. Welcome back, everybody, to the second episode of Season 4 of Theo Thoughts.
Son of a gun. Season
Yeah.
2. Sorry, Episode 2 already.
Yeah.
Season 4.
Yeah, we're getting into it now.
Yeah, a little earlier than a week later.
Yeah. We're still getting set into our schedules.
Right.
Because it's just, I mean, we're in the first month here, and we're just getting through, and only the second episode. But hopefully you might notice something better. I don't know if now that you can see more details, we look less appealing.
Clearer.
Or
more appealing.
I don't know.
We're on a better camera.
Yes. So we're getting upgrades, and it's, because we just want to bring you guys, better stuff.
Yeah, we
want
get
to make you
think,
feel like you're more in the room.
We get to thank the marketing department at Greenville University for allowing us to use their camera.
Fire.
And whoever is in charge of this building as well for continuing to let us use this stuff right here.
Yeah,
So.
all of this stuff, we have not paid for
anything.
We have had
pretty free.
We have, that's also just been a continual blessing of
Yeah.
like we've had people that are willing to help and see what we're doing and want to help us continue in what we're doing, and so that's just been a huge blessing of it all.
And all our Theo Thoughts merch, as you saw, I think we were both wearing the T-shirt last week. My father-in-law actually got that for us a while ago, last Christmas.
Yeah.
So pretty sweet. But anyway,
along with these awesome stickers.
Oh yeah, the stickers. I don't have one on me, but he always reps.
Yeah.
Judd's the one that represents. So.
But,
also, another point. I was feeling homesick for our peace lily, which you might actually be able to see in frame if it was there.
Yeah.
So walking outside in the name of the peace lily, I pulled this sprig off a tree, and that's going to sit here in honor of Lily.
Perfect.
Yep.
We'll get a little small
Wonderful.
potted plant for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
So anyway, to wrap us in, so last week's episode we talked about angels and demons and a whole bunch of stuff about that. So go check that out if you haven't already seen it. But this week, Jordan, what we talking about?
Heroes of the Bible.
I
I don't know if you guys have caught that. Have you ever seen any of those cartoons on YouTube where Jesus is like, "Hey-o"?
I might have seen a couple.
Okay. My dad plays them in church as like children's moments before he dismisses them.
Yeah.
And it's called Heroes of the Bible. But the idea is we're not talking about that. We're talking about the literal heroes in the Bible.
Yes.
Which ones are our favorites, some stories. And if you've been listening for a while, you've probably heard us mention these because like we have a topic that we like to talk about. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? So
I feel like this is going to have some Miracle Madness-esque vibes to it.
For sure.
Of just like us talking about just like how cool things are, how awesome they are, what it would have been like to witness these things back then.
It was so up until maybe about 3 or 4 hours ago, we weren't really sure we wanted to talk about this week. And a lot of times it's sort of like by the seat of our teeth. We just like come up with something.
Yeah, we either have something super planned out like a week or two in advance, or it's just like day of, we've been busy. What are we talking about?
It's one of three things. It's like okay, I heard this. I want to know what you think about it. We can bring it up. We're inviting somebody over.
Right.
We need to know what we're going to talk about. Or we're in here after we're done recording a podcast and we're like, any ideas for next week?
Yeah.
We bring up the idea for next week and then sort of let it sit
Marinate.
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah.
Simmer on the back burner.
But this week, not to say that we're lazy, but we are always. We are prepared to talk about anything. It's just what is the anything that we're going to talk about.
Paul would be proud.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen. So in heroes, at least some of the first that come to my mind, David, King
Of
David,
course, of course.
Samson,
Elijah,
especially just the judges,
of course.
judges in
It's
general.
the judges, and that's something that's and I mentioned to you in the text message, like misconceptions regarding
Right,
them.
yeah.
I was talking to some people. I think it was at my young adult small group at church. I was talking to some people this week, and I was thinking, why is it such a thought where we think of like the judges and the prophets in the Old Testament as I think of them as just old brittle guys with beards who like maybe speak the word of the Lord but don't
Yeah.
really do anything else.
Right.
But nah, they were straight dogging.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Straight dogging. There's a verse whenever Elijah is referring to Elisha, and it says, just as Elijah it was like brought the justice of the Lord with the sword, so will Elisha. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if that's really the mantle that prophets carry on, these weren't no like frail old men who just spoke the word of the Lord. Though they did with authority, these guys also knew their way around weaponry, knew their way around some combat, and they weren't
Yeah.
scared of it.
Right. Yeah, these guys like we think Samson is obviously like in my mind that's like the the very traditional like especially in like American terms like of what a hero looks like. It's a big strong guy that beats up a lot of other guys and he's like I feel like every religion or every culture has their strong like hero, like in Greek, we got Hercules,
Perseus.
yes, but
Achilles.
in Christianity we have the very real Samson,
Right.
who is like he is something to imagine. There's a movie that depicted part of Samson's life, and I can't remember the name of it.
The one that Ethan showed you?
Yes.
Yeah.
But one of the craziest parts about Samson that I think it's not funny, but it's just like crazy. That it's just like you have to laugh like, oh, what? Of when he defeated like a whole army of people with the jawbone of a donkey.
Which, if you think about it, that's actually a pretty good weapon.
Yeah.
Like, you would think that in your hand, but like if you look up what a donkey's jawbone looks like with the teeth and it looks like one of those like Aztec swords. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about with the obsidian on the side of it.
Yeah.
There's like jagged teeth of a donkey
Yeah.
getting swung at you. Like, oh my gosh.
And you'd think like maybe like he could have taken on 100, maybe 200, maybe 500, but no,
1,000.
it was 1,000.
Yeah.
1,000 Philistines, and that's Judges 15 verses 14 through
Right.
16.
In the book of, I think it's Kings, in reference to David's mighty men.
Oh,
it
yes.
talks about the
Yes.
three and how each of them had like killed up to 300 men with their spear in a single battle.
Yeah, one of them, I might butcher the name, Benaiah.
Yeah.
He was one of the mighty men, and he killed a lion in a pit on a snowy day, like just himself.
Yeah.
And then also defeating other warriors. But like the fact that he could just take on a lion, like Samson also it said that he killed a lion with his bare hands. It's also just that might be like a biblical metric of a hero is like, have you killed a lion by
Yeah,
yourself?
for real.
Because like David killed the lion, and now we have Benaiah killed the lion, and we have Samson, and Daniel didn't kill the lions, but through the power of God was able to
Shut their mouths.
yeah.
Right.
And so in that respect, I think of Daniel as also kind of a hero.
Yeah, once again, I just want to iterate that there's like such a misconception out there of these people like only relying on. And though I think that they still believe that God led them through the battle, and He probably gave them the strength to begin with. Like all the gifts that we have are given to us by the Father,
Right.
but these guys could handle themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in the respect of like God gives us the gifts, but it's our job to use said gifts.
Right.
It's our job to do that. Like it's not God taking over our bodies, but it is God giving us the power and giving us the strength to accomplish His will and saying like, I've got it, now use it.
For sure. And going through all the books of the Old Testament, you're just going to run into more and more and more and more of this, more of these unbelievable stories of people doing like. Another example is I love talking about Elijah. He's one of my favorite people to read about in the Old Testament.
For sure.
But It says after the showdown at Mount Carmel, he tucked his robe into his belt and then beat Ahab back to like it's one of the Beth something, like Beth hyphen
Yeah.
Shazir or whatever. Beats him back, and then I looked down at the footnotes and it was like it was a 13-mile trek. So he beat Ahab in his horse-drawn chariot all the way back to this place. It was 13 miles away.
Yeah, and that was quick plug. Check out Miracle Madness
For sure.
from last season, where we definitely went crazy for Elijah and all of his escapades.
That's true.
But yeah, especially that sprint. Like he's like, I'm gonna send you to go send a message by horse, and then he's like, hang on a second, sprints by.
Yeah.
13 miles, like insane.
Well, and I'd also be interested because so let's take a look at the persona. Like if you look at heroes in a comic book, it's more than just what they can do.
Right.
That's why like Superman's so boring is because, and that's maybe a hot take for some people who are listening, but like something that makes a superhero like maybe with a little more depth, like Iron Man maybe, and Superman's so different is because Superman doesn't really have personality. He doesn't he's just super strong. Whereas Iron Man or maybe even Batman, they have personality. They have things about them that differentiates them from just being super strong. So taking a look at Elijah, and I was talking to my dad about this. Do you think that the things during the showdown at Mount Carmel, you think the things that he was saying and doing was because God told him to, or was it just straight like pride, like spitting on the prophets of Baal and Asher?
I think that's a good one.
Like he didn't tell him to go get the water. And I'm pretty sure even before all of this, he didn't tell him to make it not rain. He didn't tell him to pray to not make it rain. Like this was all Elijah's doing. He said, and you could definitely fact check me, but like he said to Ahab and Jezebel, it's not going to rain for 3 years because of what you did. And he prayed earnestly, and for 3 years it did not rain. But whenever it says it prayed earnestly, he was like begging God. I think that he just believed it wasn't going to pray, or it wasn't going to rain for 3 years, you know?
I think, yeah. All right. So there's a lot of bits to that question, so I'm going to break it down.
Unpack.
So first off, there is definitely, like, we had talked about, like, the smugness was the word about Elijah. Like, his unparalleled smugness in terms of what he did on that. And, like, especially to God and to, like, the people that were, like I'm imagining you are a bystander, an Israelite who believes in, the holy God, Elohim Adonai, and you are seeing so many other people doing all of this stuff, like, the chanting around, the running around, the cutting themselves, all of this crazy stuff. And then you just see Elijah probably just standing there during the whole thing, not doing anything. And then he's just like, well, get some water on it. It's just like, and I would imagine being that person of just like, oh my gosh, what is he doing? Like, I would have it, and like, I feel like I'd have an expectation of just like, do something, like, go to your knees, offer a lamb or something, like, do something, man.
Right.
But Elijah, in that confidence, in that, I don't know if it was pride, but just in that, like, complete unshaken, because like, unshaking confidence in something can look like pride,
but it doesn't have to be.
And in that way, he could have been proud of like knowing that like what God is going to do, or just like the unwavering faith looks like super smug prideness that comes from like foolishness. But I think like he knew, and it wasn't pride, but it was just like, watch this, wait for this.
For real. I was at church. It wasn't my dad. I misspoke earlier. It was actually the pastor of the church I go to, and he preached on this on Sunday, and that the prophets of Baal were all prophets chosen by Jezebel. There's 450 of them, and their right in the temple to be a prophet was prostitution. So what would happen is they would be like her boy toys, and then people who came to worship Baal, they would do the deed, and then any child that was born from that, no strings attached, they would sacrifice it to Baal.
Yeah.
So you see all these people up on the mountain, totally grotesque in the eyes of God. These prophets of Baal, right? And they start out, and the whole thing is promiscuity. So they start out chanting and playing their drums and trying to get Baal's attention, but noticing like you said, Elijah just standing there saying like, oh, maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he's using the bathroom.
Maybe he's on vacation.
Yeah, so he could be anywhere. So okay, guys, stop it. Like, stop with the cutting yourself. I understand. Go get me some water, right?
Yeah.
There's a song called "The Days of Elijah."
Yeah.
And one of my favorite parts of the song is a really underrated line. It says, "These are the days of Elijah declaring the word of the Lord." It doesn't say like speaking for the Lord. It says declaring the word of the Lord, which is an interesting think about that. It's an interesting phrase.
Well, yeah, like a declaration is a prominent statement that has, belief and passion and command in it. And so declaring the word of the Lord is, if we think, if we get really into it, the word being Jesus and the word being God, declaring the word of the Lord is Jesus being the truth. And so the word being the truth. And so Elijah was declaring the truth that God is the Lord. Like,
he was one of the first prophets too, wasn't he?
In 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 21, Elijah said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is God, follow him." Like, Elijah knew, like, it's, you can't, first off, it's not both. Second off, it's definitely not that one. Finally, and honestly, firstly, God is the God. Like, there is nothing else. And so in that declaration, it is just a prominent statement of truth in that unwavering. Because the truth is unwavering, he was unwavering.
Right. And also in speaking to these prophets, and maybe like there should be like a different word for it, because taking a look at all the accolades through God that Elijah did, the guy didn't even die. Like, he was so in tune with what the Lord wanted for him that, like, I asked this question just because it's worded this way in declaration of the word of the Lord. Did he speak for the Lord and the Lord made it happen? Or was it already the Lord's, like, idea? You know what I mean? Because Elijah said it's not going to rain for 3 years. And I don't think that was preempted. I don't think, at least, and if my memory serves me right, and obviously the listener can go back, or the watcher, whatever you're doing, can go back and look at it. But, like, was there ever a point where God was like, "Okay, Elijah, cook. So I got you, man. Your faith is crazy. Like, do miracles in my name."
I think, okay, this is where I think it gets really, really interesting, especially in the terms of of God knowing everything, but in the perspectives of how all of us operate in that. And excuse me. What I think is really cool is, first off, we have free will. That's straight out, like, we have the choice to do things. Now, God has a will that will always be done, because there are always people that will follow God's will.
Okay.
And in that, even when people fail, there's still a way of God's will prevailing through. Now, when it came to this specific situation, was it like, did God tell Elijah, like, "Hey, tell them this because I know this, and now you know this"? But also, there's the thing of, like, God equipping us and preparing us so that, like, when Jesus said he was going to leave the disciples, and they were like, "Well, how do we do this without you, like, physically right here?" And he's just like, "Well, I'm always going to be with you. You just got, you have my name. You carry that with you, and then look what you'll do." And not to say just like, well, if you say my name attached to anything, then it will be done. But in the, like, when you're with my will and with my name, and you say it, like, that's, you're speaking power here.
Right.
And so when Elijah was saying that, it could have been either way, but it says that it was like a proclamation by Elijah.
Yeah.
And so he was proclaiming this, in that God grants us wisdom, and whether it was through a lay down of the Holy Spirit, whether it was like Elijah having the, like, prophetic feeling, because part of the job, like there are people that prophesy, and the people that prophesy, sometimes they get it like a direct word from God that they're supposed to relay. Sometimes it's like, it's not direct, but God has equipped them, and they are just so in tune that words don't need to be said, and they just know.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's, like I said, there needs to be a different word for prophet, because the prophets are where the kings of Israel went whenever crap got hot.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I forget which one it is. It might be it might be Elijah. It might be Samuel. I don't
Mm.
remember, but I'm pretty sure it's King David, and they're going into a battle against one of the ites.
Okay.
And it's the one where like the king throws his son up on the wall. You know what I'm
Yes,
talking about?
yes.
Well, anyway, Elijah tells, or whichever prophet it is, he tells the people, he's like, "Oh, you got victory.
Mm.
They don't even worry about it. You got victory."
I think I remember that. Yeah,
You know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
And then the king was like, for Molech, threw his kid up on the wall, and like the Israelites were so grotesque, they were like, "All right, buddy," and like walked away.
Yeah. Yeah, the king of Moab.
Moab.
So we got
Moabites. I
yeah,
got the
the
ites
Moabites. Yeah, threw up his son, and yeah. So when the battle turned against Mesha, he attempted a last-ditch effort to break through the enemy. First off with 700 soldiers, and then taking up his son against the wall, and yeah, and then it just kind of the desperation for human sacrifice didn't really go so well there.
No, it didn't. But which prophet was it?
This
That told them that was
was
going to have. Which book is it in?
this is in Second Kings.
Okay, so I don't know, and that probably is Isaiah. And which king is it? We get
That's a
we have
good
to
question.
fact check here sometimes.
Yes, I can only type so fast.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, that's Elijah, right?
Yes,
So if we
yeah.
had, I forget. Whenever I was a kid, one of my dad's former students, who was our youth pastor at our church, had like this Magic the Gathering game, but it was with Bible characters.
Okay.
And I had a huge collection of them. And then I think he took them back because I didn't take care of them well enough. But I was like an 8-year-old kid, so don't sue me, you know. But that was really, really cool. And this just kind of reminds me of that, you know. Because,
Yeah.
like, it was a pretty cool depiction of
Right.
like what these guys would look like cartoonized.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So first off, if you haven't been able to tell based on our episodes last season and just what we talked right now, we really love Elijah.
yeah,
Like-
we Elijah's guy.
Now, I think it was okay. It was either Elijah or Elisha. Also, it was Elisha with this king of
It was?
Moab. Yeah.
Yeah.
But with one of them, there was also a time I was just talking about this with somebody of intercessory prayer, where Elijah was going to pray on behalf of the Israelites, on behalf of the people, of like, you know, God, take it easy on them.
Right.
Like, yes, they're stupid, but like, take it easy on them. Kind of a flashback to when Moses interceded on top of Mount Sinai when all the Israelites down there, you know, were golden calf and all of that jazz. Moses hadn't even come off down the mountain yet, and God was like, I'm so done with them. Like, Moses, just, I'm done. And Moses was like, all right, time to lock in. And he interceded on our behalf, and God was like, I see you. I see what you're doing. Like, I see you interceding in your righteous ways. And in the same way, there was a time when Elijah was about to do that, and God said, if you do this, I can't say no to that face. But certain things need to happen.
Right.
So I need to ask you not to right now, because it's like the puppy dog guys. We're just like, it will be impossible for me to go through with what needs to be done, even though you have righteous intent and good intent in your heart for these people and what is happening right now. This needs to happen. But it's just the fact that like God had to say, man, don't start, because if you start, then I got to stop.
Yeah.
And I just think that is so cool.
Because his words had sway with God Almighty.
It's just like he was that guy.
Yeah. He didn't die. Like Jesus, whenever Jesus came back, they were like, "Are you Elijah?"
Exactly.
So pretty cool.
So,
But
yeah.
we've talked enough about Elijah. Who's the next card in the pack?
So
that
I
we're
would
gonna
say,
pick on?
in terms of other, you know, thinking of big heroes, you got to think about the ones who started off small. David.
David,
King
for
David.
sure. David's accolades are unreal.
Yeah, especially like from how he started. So David also has got a lion kill underneath his belt.
Yes, he does.
But also I think he had like more, like he and Elijah, they both had the same confidence in the Lord, but it was presented, I feel, very differently. Like Elijah was more on the just like, I know this and you guys don't, and this is
Yeah.
so funny.
Yeah.
But David was just like, I know this, and so I know I'm safe, and it's like just kind of like more.
Well, until you read the Psalms,
Yeah.
buddy.
Well, yeah, when he gets
was
into
pretty
there,
wavery, huh?
yeah, but like especially like right at the beginning when, they're going up against the Philistines and Goliath, like David's just like, well, God's got it. He was with me with the lion and the bear, so he's with me now. And then he also got 5 stones, not because he thought he might need 5 shots,
Yeah.
but because Goliath
Had 4 brothers.
Yep, and so he was just like, all right, I guess we're going with the whole family
Which actually,
today.
that's not spoken about. That's not spoken about in the book, like right whenever it's talking about Goliath.
Right.
It's spoken of later.
Yeah, which also just speaks to the Bible itself and its like its interconnectedness with all of the different stories,
Right.
which I think is fascinating. So to continue in like talking about David, so he knew that it would only take one shot, and in that confidence of the Lord. And even when the king was just like, hey, you're gonna need some armor, bro. Like you can't just go out there like this. David was just like, it's too big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's clunky. I don't really need this. I've got the
I
armor
can't
of
wear
God.
that. I'll look silly.
Just like,
come on.
Like I'm gonna go out there wearing armor when I have God. Like
Right.
ew. Like
Well, even like Saul, because it says whenever in the introduction of Saul in 1 Samuel, it says that he was not only the handsomest man in all of Israel, but he was a head taller than everybody else. So this imposing guy is like, oh, knock yourself out, kid. I guess like terrified of Goliath. And Saul was supposed to be some military leader too.
yeah.
If you read 1 Samuel, he's supposed to be some military. Like that's what gets him anointed by Samuel to be the king.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm stuck on the prophets thing. Like the prophets are like really the harbingers of what God had in store,
Right.
for the declaring the word of the Lord. But anyway,
Yeah, and in that, like going out, then throughout his life. But first off, just taking like this is a kid, like probably like teenage years, and like it was said, like he was smaller than all of his brothers. Like he was kind of shrimpy, but imagine like seeing this little dude walk up with like just a sack of stones and a string, and against this like giant behemoth of a human, and then watching him first not only throw a stone and just be like, oh wow, I'm impressed he took that off. What, he just cut off his head with a sword, with his sword, with Goliath's sword?
Yeah.
Just like, bro, I'd be so terrified. Like being a Philistine, like I think that was such a precise shot. Oh my gosh, he cut his head off.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine like the ceasing loudness of each army? You know what I'm talking about? Because you're wearing like clunky armor.
Yeah.
So like as you're wearing that, and if one side is like nervous and like obviously, then it's gonna be like like the clattering.
Yeah.
And then that's how it had been from the Israelites forever. You know what I mean? Just stand there shaking in your armor. This is from Voice of Truth, by the way, from Casting Crowns. But anyway, and then this happens, and I just imagine it's like whenever this is over, I'm gonna go see if I can catch the end of the volleyball game because I love how hype it gets. Just one spike, one something, and one block, and the whole gym's up on its feet, bouncing up and down. Right now, imagine an army. I don't remember how big, or if it says how big the army is, but imagine that in full metal armor, probably bronze, full armor, jumping up and down because some like 14, 15, 16-year-old kid throws a pebble from a Brookling brook into the forehead of a giant.
Yeah.
Right? And then he chops his head off.
Yeah. Or to think of...
And that's just the start. That's the origin story.
I know. Killer origin story. But even to think of... So like the cease of quaking... I think of the Philistines probably like, yeah, Goliath, like, yeah, squash him, step on him.
Yeah.
And like all of the raging cheering and the banging the swords against the shields. And then first watching him go down and then the cutting off the head.
Well, he's going to get back up, right?
Yeah.
He's got to get back up.
So first it went silent when he fell down. And then it got really loud again because they were running away.
Yeah. And he took the sword with him and... Right? Yeah, he took the sword with him and then gave it to Saul, I thought. The sword and the armor?
I believe, yes.
Yeah, he gave it to Saul. So David's really, really cool. And I know that he has a ton of accolades. He was a member of the 3. So, like, David was also a crazy warrior, which is, again, crazy because, like, you read through Psalms and most of it's just him whining. It's like, oh, I have so many enemies.
Yep.
My
Yeah.
enemies
What
want
was
to get
me?
rid of me. Yeah, for real. That's Psalms.
Yeah.
But reading through all of that stuff, you find that David was quite the brute of a man.
Yeah. And like imagine like being the people of Israel, like hearing just like about like, oh, I wonder who's the next king is gonna be, and then finding out that David is the king is just like, that's the man who killed Goliath.
Yeah, and
like
then-
just like oh my, like he would have turned to legend at that point, just like the boy who slayed the giant.
Right.
Like he would have been talked about. Like he was a household name. Like
So much so that even like Saul got jealous, tried to kill him. But then
Mm-hmm.
that took some cojones from Saul, if you ask me, because like who am I in comparison to Goliath?
right.
This guy took down Goliath.
That yeah, it took something.
You think David? Do you think David's voice dropped yet? You think I'm just gonna go get 5 stones? I have my slingshot. Don't worry about it.
I imagine I think he was still very much
He
a
probably
kid.
had the lowest voice actually. That kid had. He had.
I don't
it.
know. I think he was. I think because of the like the judgment of outward appearance, I feel like he was still
Perhaps,
like he was
yeah.
shrimpy in stature and in voice and in everything.
Yeah.
Except I like to think that he spoke super articulately, and like was always sure of what he said, and like he'd never stutter because he was always just like so confident in the Lord and what he had.
Yeah. Yeah. Jesse raised a good one for
Yeah.
sure.
Like I'd imagine just be like, Jesse's boy did that? Which the old one or that
No,
one?
no, the
like
one-
that one?
Yeah.
Like that'd be crazy. Like the next day, like Jesse was just like, look at what my son did. Like
Right.
after like probably treating him like crap, he's just like, look at this guy.
God understands the poetry of an underdog story. Look at Gideon. Gideon's
Yeah.
another great
Gideon's
one.
a great example.
Gideon's another great one. And if you ever like, I'm a huge VeggieTales fan. I don't know if you're a huge VeggieTales
Oh, of
fan.
course. I don't
But
have everything
Gideon,
memorized, but
Gideon
yes.
Tuba Warrior is one of the best VeggieTales that's out there.
Yeah. Like he also with the like just an army of like 300 men, like they defeated a giant army.
Right.
We're not
yeah.
sure of the exact numbers, but like we're talking.
That was the Philistines too, wasn't it?
I think no. Midianite.
Midianites. Yeah, the Midianite camp.
Yeah.
It would be like days until battle. They have the little sign down in the
Yeah.
camp. But yeah, it was like the Lord said, I know how to thin them out. And then
Right.
he was like, whoever laps up water like a dog needs to
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah.
Gideon was probably like, come on, guys, really? Like, get out of here. We don't need you anyway.
Right. You know, speaking of some giant slayers, also another one of David's mighty men, Abishai,
Abishai, yeah.
who also he defended David from a giant. So the man who also killed a giant had somebody defend him from a giant. So there's just some guys just laying waste to some giants here.
In Judges, Ehud. We've talked about Ehud before,
Yeah, a
I
little bit.
think. But just for some background, it's not really spoken much about in the book of Judges because it kind of goes from the beginning whenever God like tells you what a judge is, and
Right.
again you think of some guy with like big white curly hair, but it's actually like special agents for the Lord.
Yeah.
Ehud was a left-handed assassin who went in and killed like the really fat king and stabbed him
I
in the
remember
stomach.
that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because
so-
they would always check the like the right side or something.
Or the left, the
Yeah, well,
left
yeah.
thigh because
Yes,
or
that's
hip,
where they draw it from.
but it was on his right.
Right.
So he killed
Correct.
the king, stuck the dagger so deep that his belly fat hit it, and the king pooped out his entrails, and then through that, yeah, it's, well, that's just how it. That's how it's read, and then Ehud escapes through the latrine, through the sewer,
Yep.
gets out of there, man. Like
That's like some crazy assassin.
that's his
stuff.
own. That's the only story about this guy, and we never hear about him.
Just like the left-handed man who escaped through the sewer.
Like the 6-fingered man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except he's a good guy. Ehud's a good guy.
Yeah. You know, another, I think we had mentioned at the beginning that many people think of Samson. Now, Samson had, first off, incredible strength and incredible hair.
Yeah, he must have.
Yeah.
Like Maui, just
Yeah. And Samson, I don't know if I saw, I've been seeing like some memes or something on media where it's like somebody is, you know, they're about to fight an army and it's like they say, Lord, bear witness to the might of your creation. And like that's when Samson took down the pillars. Like this was at the end of his life after he had his eyes gouged out, his hair cut. He was like probably chained like this between multiple pillars, and he just brought the entire
Right.
temple or the entire building down with everybody in it, including him.
yeah.
And like also just during his life of like fighting for Israel, it's just some crazy stuff.
Yeah, and it's a unique story. I mean, he pulled the Well, I guess I'll get to that, but like the uniqueness of the story is that he was such a screw up. Like everything he did.
Yeah.
Literally the only covenant that he kept to be a judge was not cutting his hair.
Right.
Some Philistine man snuck in whenever Delilah wooed him to sleep and then cut his hair, right?
Yeah.
But that's also one of the few moments where it says the Holy Spirit fell upon.
Right.
The Spirit of God fell upon Samson, and he was able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, in the final chapter, he was at a Philistine temple being currently mocked during a celebration, and his strength was slowly returning as his hair grew back, and then pulling down the building, killing himself along with thousands of Philistines. And it also said that he killed more enemies in that one moment in his death than his entire life.
Man, bringing down the house.
Like, it was just crazy. Also, he carried the city gates on his shoulders.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. That's what I backtracked on. They were like, show the city gates. And he was just like, okay. He just picked up the city gates. And those were supposed to be like totally immovable because once the sun went down, they would close the gates. And I don't know what city it was, but they would close the gates. And you weren't supposed to be able to open them until morning.
Right. Yeah, the city gates of Gaza on his shoulders.
Gaza?
Yeah.
Probably a pretty big town, man.
Yeah, this is just the feats that were accomplished by this man were insane.
Yeah.
But also, it was a really great lesson of like, it really doesn't matter how physically strong you are. Like, any person can fall to temptation and weakness and fall down. And so it's in that it's also just such a wonderful lesson about like, it's really not about your strength, it's about God's strength. And when we have strength in God, we can do anything. But when we fail ourselves and we like, that's when, we fall down. When we take pride in ourselves or think, oh, I can do it, I can be a part of this, and not be open to this temptation. It's just like, really?
Yeah.
And so it also just serves as a good lesson for that.
That's why the books of like First and Second Kings are some of my favorite because if it's good, you have like some. I don't know why they're not like the. Well, I guess he was a major prophet. Elijah's not counted as a major prophet because there's not a book named after him, right? Isn't that who are the major prophets? It's Isaiah, Ezekiel. Oh, is it Elijah and Elisha? Or who are the other two? Quick Google. I'll Google this one if you want to talk. Okay.
Keep talking.
But anyway, as you read First and Second Kings, I love the trio that is made out of a righteous king, one of the prophets, and God. So that's whenever you get guys like Hezekiah, Isaiah, and God, Josiah. I think at that point it was Ezekiel,
right,
and God. And what's crazy about Isaiah is that he also had a humble beginning because he didn't think that he was worthy.
Yeah.
And then the angel came down. He had the vision of the angel touching the hot coal to his lips.
Right.
God asks, who's going to spread my word to the masses? Who's going to enact my justice? I don't feel worthy. And he says, take the coal, touch my lips. Here I am.
Yeah.
And here I am. Now I'm going to go do. Like, I have my superpowers. I have my God superpowers.
Yeah.
And Isaiah goes and does his. What'd you find?
Yeah, so I mean the major prophets and the minor prophets are more referring to the books themselves. So major, we have Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel. And then the minors, we have all of the other ones, the like Noah, Amos, Obadiah,
John
all that.
McEnam.
Yeah, and like Elijah he's not considered a major or minor because again he didn't write a book of prophecy, but the actions in his ministry, like he's still considered a prophet, just a non-writing prophet.
Makes sense.
But still, that like again, that doesn't like if Elijah had a book,
like, son of a gun.
Like
that's the most like comic book material that there is in the Bible. But I absolutely love the ladder of Second Kings whenever it goes from Hezekiah to like because that's whenever Israel's in turmoil, or I guess it's Judah at that point. Israel had already been taken over by the Assyrians, but that's whenever Judah is in turmoil, and they just like, well, we're going to rely solely on God. It's all that we can do.
Right, yeah.
And speaking back to like some unnamed heroes, and there's another one of the prophet, is the guy who spoke about, I think it was King Jeroboam, I want to say. It was Jeroboam.
Okay.
Jeroboam planted he made like a bronze calf up north in Dan or south in Dan in
Okay.
Israel. And then one guy that remains unnamed, he was like, a king is going to raise up named Josiah, who is going to spill the ashes out of the belly of your thing there, and then like pretty much just like wreak havoc on the rest of the Asherah poles and like
Yeah. Yeah. Jeroboam was the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel.
yeah.
After Solomon, it kind of went
Yeah.
and split down. But yeah, I think also just in going about through all of these heroes of the Bible, you know, we talk about them. There's always just, I think, a habit with other topics that we talk about of like the stuff of yesterday. But like there's still things of today. Like there's not necessarily like, you know, major and minor prophets writing
Right.
prophetic holy scripture to us right now. But like there are like people, I would still say that like they're kind of like heroes of today. But like
And prophecy is a gift
especially
of the Holy Spirit.
yeah.
So
And I would even
still
say
happens.
like especially through Jesus that the heroes are heroes of their words. Because there was something different, like especially like up until Jesus, it was kind of a different vibe, just because it was the start of the relationship and the start of like the Israelites trying to figure things out. That's why there were so many prophets, is like the Israelites just kept on messing up
Right.
over and over. And so God was just like, all right, here's this guy. Oh my gosh, here's this guy over, you know, hundreds of years.
And that was the point of the judges.
Yeah.
And when the judges didn't work out, it was the prophets. It's,
Yeah.
okay, you want a king? Here's a king.
It's just like, okay, it's time. And then he sent this guy down, and he's just like, okay, I know you've seen the heroes of old, and you were expecting me to come in, you know, riding on my gallant horse with my sword to be your next hero against the Romans. But he was just like, let me stop you right there.
Yeah, that's
Like-
that's not what I'm about to be.
Yeah, and so I think that's also like what God calls for us, because sometimes we get the mentality of just like, oh my gosh, I need to be a righteous hero. I need to be like, you know, the righteous hand of God, you know, slaying down, you know, his enemies and all that. I'm just like, whoa, hold back with
Yeah.
the slaying there, bud.
Well, I think it's also baby steps because we want to get to that point without being at the start. You know, like we have more like the same spirit that raised Christ Jesus from the dead lives in us. So, with that being true, we have opportunity to reach into the same amount of power that Elijah had, if not more.
Yeah,
Right? He was just at the top of the level.
Right.
You know, like his XP level was
yeah.
through the roof.
Yeah, and especially just the unwaveringness, especially with like all of the more stuff there is, it is like harder to be unwavering in that same capacity. And so we don't see as much stuff like that. And even then, just like our battles are different. Like we don't have to battle against 450 prophets, you know, cutting themselves, dancing around a burning pit. Sorry, not burning pit, to try and prove their God.
A pit to be burned.
Yes, but we have that looks like something different today. But instead of God calling down fire, it's, you know, the word of God. Like I think that's so like Jesus is the word, and so that is. I mean, we talked about this last week, and we always talk about it. But like that's what it is today. It's the word flowing through us, and
Yeah.
like that is the heroic acts of today are through the words. And I think, you know, we've seen that in some people, like throughout, you know, the past 1,000 years of like people having, you know, giving us words of wisdom from God that, you know, live on and carry on through us in like our, you know, kind of examples, like the message of evangelism from Billy Graham, like fantastic message of unity from MLK. Or, you know, the messages about truth of St. Augustine. Like there's like these, they aren't like, you know, donkey jawbone, you know, killing 1,000 people kind of heroic acts, but the heroic statements in their radical words changing the people.
And I mean, like these things, I mean, they do still happen.
Yeah, for sure.
They do. I mean, people are in war zones all over the world, and
Yeah.
miraculous things still happen. It's just what you choose to attribute it to.
Desmond Doss.
Yeah, there you go. Desmond Doss, that's one of them. Hacksaw Ridge, if you're like, that's the movie,
Yeah.
but the story of another one. And my wife, she could probably tell it better. I don't know how old she was, but she said one time she was walking with her dad, and there was some guy, and he'll listen to this, and then he'll probably call me and correct me to the story. But it goes something along the lines of he was walking with her, and there was this man who was like an immediate threat to them, and I think he was like tweaking off some drugs or something, and then he ran up with like the intent to harm, and Mike is his name, said, "Whoa there. In the name of Jesus, you're not going to go any further." And the guy just stopped dead in his tracks. And it was just like, okay. And then just whatever his
Enough
intent
said.
was disappeared. Yeah, it was gone. It was gone.
Yeah.
And that's there's a movie, War Room, done by the people
Oh,
who do.
that's good.
Yeah, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
Happens in that movie too. Whenever
Yeah.
the guy tries to steal the lady's purse. But the whole
Yeah.
point is, we have a Superman,
Yes. Yeah.
and he has character.
Yeah.
Don't
And our
get it
superpowers are our super words and our super faith in God. That sounded really cheesy.
No, that's okay. You cook.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yeah.
enough said. Yeah. Also, we made a lot of references to other stuff. Even Desmond Doss. We had an episode where we talked about Christian themes in the secular worlds, where we basically talked about
good episode.
where we talked about other movies and media and other things where Christ's teachings are prevalent, but it's in like through a secular lens. But yes, we referenced a lot of episodes today, which was fun. And also just had a good time, looking back at some of these old heroes,
Right.
giving them some of the glory. Because a lot of times, especially as today Christians, we get really fixated on like just the gospel and just the New Testament. We gotta, like we talked about last week, like if you gotta look at the before leading all up to it. Look what went into building this kingdom.
Well, and also like it's so much fun, and we act like it's a huge deal to talk about the same thing, but it's
Yeah.
not like we're talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and
Right.
over again. Like Miracle Madness happened last April.
Yeah.
So people who listen, and also whenever you read the Bible in the same key, same point, sometimes you forget. You forget about how cool these people are.
Yeah.
You go back and read like, whoa, what?
Yeah.
I forgot about this.
It's like you get desensitized to the story for a bit. It's just like, oh yeah, I remember the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal.
It's like, oh man.
But no, it should be just like, I remember the story of Elijah and the prophets of
Yeah.
Baal. Like, they don't sell them short. Like, these things are like awesome.
And that's why we read it over again.
And
that's
God's
why we,
glory is, shining through it.
Yeah, that's why we bring it back up.
Yeah.
So
anyway, thank you so much for watching and listening. Again, follow us on Instagram at theo_thoughts.podcast for all the up-to-date details. And we are on everything. But now we're going to start getting some more regular stuff back on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all that.
Clips.
For
Go like
all
the
of you
clips.
that love that short form, minute-long scroll content. But again, if you like what you see, let us know. Share it around. Yeah, and we're just looking forward to getting back and settled, getting into the routine.
for sure.
So, yeah.
In the name of next time, I'm Jordan Peter now.
I'm Judson Page.
Love y'all.
God bless.